Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Now, I'm here this morning to decipher whether or not Rosenior has already improved Chelsea. Okay, welcome back to the channel. Once again, thank you very much for the support. We are looking to 50k early on in the year for subscribers on the channel. So if you do enjoy the pieces, please don't forget to subscribe. And today, in a very, very busy week of Premier League games coming and going, we are going to try and touch on something that I think deserves a lot of credit in the midst of what's all going on in the Premier League, which is Rosenior and the job that he's doing at Chelsea currently. He's managed 8 games, he's won 6 of them, lost 2, and obviously the 2 losses have come in the EFL Cup semi-final. Now, there was a stat that come across my desk the other day and we put it out on the Overlap's main socials, and what I think has been overshadowed somewhat is that Rosenior has now won 4 Premier League games, bearing in mind that they're his first 4 Premier League games, on the bounce. He's won them all. And Maresca only managed to achieve that feat once in 57 games as Chelsea manager. So I really want to hone in on what he's changed. And I know the fixtures have been very, very easy. But if we remember the last 10 games of Maresca's era, we had Bournemouth in there, Leeds in there. And they dropped a lot of points against the lesser oppositions. And he's come into a team and they've already sort of kicked on and looks like they're winning games. And few of the performances have been patchy. But today I want to cover the good, the bad and, well, the ugly of the Chelsea team. So, obviously, some of the quotes from all the players have been talking about, obviously, João Pedro was saying that Rosenior is a lot more electric. He wants to play a lot more fast. And there's an element of compactness on and off the ball that he thinks is different. I think just in general, Chelsea fans who are watching this will agree with me, I hope, which is he just seems a little bit more together with the players. And I know it's a really easy thing to say, but when they're winning, but on the interviews and the training, obviously he's taking on the jokes quite well. He's having a little bit of banter with the press officers and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that side of Rosenior. And we covered it on the channel to be like, people are going to take the mick out of him, but if they are winning games, which is currently what they're doing, and he's taking it on the chin and he's giving it back and he's really good with communication in the press conferences, you can learn a lot about Chelsea just by listening to him talk. I think you would be quite surprised as to what he's managed to produce so far at Chelsea, given the amount of stick that he already come with when he first joined. So, off the back of that, I've got some data on your screen right now just to run through Chelsea in 25-26 season, and we can see the difference side by side between Enzo Maresca and Rosenior. We've got all the bits of data here, cross-referencing. So, as you can imagine, a lot of this stuff hasn't changed because they do play very similar styled-ish. And obviously, Rosenior has played a lot lesser teams. But the shots are up, the shots on target up, goals up, shots faced is the exact same. Shot faced and target's gone up though. Goals conceded is the exact same. XG is a bit higher, XG against is a bit lower, the possession is more, the passes are more, the passing accuracy is more, so on, so on, so on. The key bits of data I want to throw out in this graphic in front of me is the direct speed has gone down by 0.13 meters per second, which is showing that Rosenior has brought this element of control to the Chelsea team. In a team that I already thought had a lot of control, but they are now having sort of this maximum control in games. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about what they did against Wolves. And for me, this is one of them moments where I've looked at Chelsea and I've watched Chelsea, and we've seen it in the second half against West Ham, where I think they look like a really, really good side, especially on the ball with their principles and stuff like that. So, on the board in front of me, we've got a 4-2-3-1, which is the base formation of what Chelsea had. But then they had Pedro Neto, Cole Palmer, and Enzo Fernandez played this really unique role out on the left-hand side. And in the pivot, we had Moises Caicedo and Andre Santos. We had Cucurella and Gusto as the fullbacks. Now, this shape did evolve quite heavily. And if we just put it at Robert Sanchez's feet, obviously we covered this in all the previews, talk about Rosenior Strasbourg, the keeper's being asked to do a lot. And the keeper's being asked to step up and break the game and break the centre half. So like this. Now, on the left-hand side, I will talk a little bit about what they did at Crystal Palace and why it didn't work. So they had Cucurella, but then they had Pedro Neto. And what I noticed very early on, and you can actually see it for the goal that Mateta, I think Robert Sanchez saves it. It's a massive chance in the game for Palace. I'll throw some screenshots up on the screen if I can remember to do so. But they had Pedro Neto and Marc Cucurella rotating on this left-hand side. Now, Pedro Neto ends up coming here and he passes the ball a little bit too square to Badiashile. It's a bad pass, it's bobbling, the appreciation on the pass isn't good enough, and Mateta pickpockets it and runs through on the build-up. Now, against Wolves, this completely changed because we had Enzo Fernandez dropping that touch bit deeper and almost stringing along with this midfield three. So sometimes it would be Enzo Fernandez up here, in there, then it would also be Cucurella at left back or Enzo Fernandez and stuff like that. So already there was an evolution in this 4-2-ish build-up, especially with the goalkeeper, that Enzo Fernandez was stood in this position. Now, why that works so well for him is he's a very good player on the ball. He's a fantastic player on the ball. Andre Santos and Caicedo also, but Andre Santos has got this little bit more small space quality. If I think of Enzo Fernandez, I think of these long switches, these long diags, these stretching balls in behind, these lofted balls in behind. When Andre Santos plays, and I noticed this quite a lot in the second leg against Arsenal, he's a very tight-knit, intricate 1-2 bouncing off, cutting through these little lines of pressure in and out. And then what this gives you is this obviously left-sided overload. So when the keeper steps up, you've got your left centre-half, almost like a three at the back, where you've got your winger, your wing-back and your centre-back, all stepping up into that. And that gives you an element of progression. And we'll go and talk about how they scored a goal against Wolves using this exact system here on the left with this 2v1. But then in the middle, we had Cole Palmer, who was given this little bit more of a freer role on the right-hand side in this right pocket. João Pedro, who we know has been absolutely exceptional since Liam Rosenior's come in. I've got some data actually to show you. So since Rosenior's come in, João Pedro has started 7 games, 5 goals, 1 assist, and obviously 2 penalties won in this game. Now, he had a little bit of a dip towards the end of Maresca's reign, but he's struck back so well, and he's been exceptional. And I think for Liam Rosenior, what they do a little bit more than a Maresca team is they play off the 9, but a lot of times. In the games, you know, it's a lot of back to goal passes, a lot of bounce passes, a lot of wall passes, everything. So if we're talking about getting through the pressure in these tight situations against the midfielder, and then we're looking at firing it into João Pedro just to bounce it back outside, he does that so well. And when his form had just dipped that little bit, I thought his technical quality was a little bit scrappy, a little bit raw, but it seems like with the rotation, obviously he started 7 games under Rosenior, but there was moments where he's obviously favoured Delap, he's rotating the 9s quite well, and I think he just looks a little touch sharper in a very congested fixture schedule currently. I think he just looks a touch sharper and a little bit more confident. And even in the Arsenal game, when they were up against it, I thought he played a really, really good role on the ball to get Chelsea out of them deep build-up situations against players like Saliba and Gabriel. But this is virtually what it looked like on the board in possession, but I want to show you some game screenshots to run through just how Chelsea are pinning teams back and how they look just that touch better and sharper against lesser opposition. If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. So on your screen right now, we've got the build-up leading up to the Wolves' 3rd goal. So as we can see, right now we've got that same scenario with Robert Sanchez splitting the centre-halves. And if we look to the left-back, it is not Marc Cucurella, it's Enzo Fernandez dropping out of the block, dropping out of the shape to come and receive on that line. So we can see as the play evolves, we can see him go through a 4-2 build-up, then a 3-2 build-up, including Robert Sanchez. And it's this pass from Andre Santos. So they work the press really nicely. Sanchez has got his studs on the ball, as we imagine of a Rosenior team, these principles of waiting and being a bit more patient. And then Andre Santos, in one touch, bounces it off into Fofana, and then he drills a ball right the way through Wolves' pressing shape in to the Chelsea player there, who can run, split it off, bounce it off to Pedro Neto. And then what have we got on the other side? We've got Marc Cucurella pinning back that Wolves defender with the overlap coming from Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez ends up in this position where he's got 2 metres between him and his fullback. He slips it to that underlap from Marc Cucurella, and it's cut back to a unmarked within metres and metres of space to Cole Palmer, who smashes it into the roof of the net. Now, if I just show you on the board why they were able to do this, it's because of this use of the goalkeeper here and how extreme their use of the goalkeeper is. Because if we can imagine that this player's curving inside here and then this player jumps right here, we're looking for these Andre Santos small space, these bounce passes, these really tight situations to just go bang. And then that into there will trigger a reaction from someone because he's worried about him. He maybe is just a little bit more reserved. And then if it goes back and we're talking about them one-touch actions to accelerate the play. We mentioned this a lot when we covered Rosenior Strasbourg. We talked about they are a very slow team on the ball, but they're waiting for them little cues, them little jumps in the pressure to open up just them meters of space, just to bang it through, right through the lines like this and snap lines. But we've not seen a team be baited into that press often against Chelsea. And I think Arsenal, over the 2 legs, was one of the teams who actually went up against them and pressed. And I still thought Chelsea were decent enough on the ball. But I do feel like they are well more familiar in what they're doing right now against a Wolves team, against the West Ham in the second half, which I'm going to go on to speak about now. But yeah, these principles of drawing in the press and then breaking really fast, I think really do suit this Chelsea team for the players they've got. The players like João Pedro to play their back to goal plays. Got Andre Santos, who's a very nippy passer. Fofana, who's good on the ball. We've got Gusto Cucurella, who are now being asked to be full-on fullbacks in terms of breaking down the outside. Sometimes coming inside as well, standing here. And then you've got Cole Palmer, who's great on the run with the ball at his feet. Enzo Fernandez, long stretching balls in behind. Nice switches to the other sides. So yeah, we're going to talk about now something else that they do on the ball, but more in the opposition's half. Okay, so moving on into our next segment now, where we're talking about how Chelsea are going up against these deeper blocks and, in my opinion, creating a little bit more chances. So we know that Chelsea now, under Rosenior, as we just mentioned, like to draw in the press a little bit more and then break in behind and use these semi-transitional moments. And I'll go back on in to speak about them in a little bit, but I want to talk to you about what they have changed on the ball. Now, we've seen this once or twice under Maresca. I think it was Brentford away. My mind's a bit shaky with that. But what happens a lot is we have 3 centre-backs and a 2 midfield build-up like this. Now, a lot of Chelsea fans have been aggravated by this because what happens a lot is when teams sit in a 5-4-1 or even a 4-4-2 like this, what happens is you're almost cancelled out, like this, sorry. You're almost cancelled out when you have a 3-2 build-up because if these 2 players just stand and cover the midfield pivot like this, then what happens is this depth circulation and it's just back and forth like this. Now, what Chelsea have done against Wolves, against West Ham in the second half, is they've somewhat ripped this up. And now, how have they done this? What they have done is they have gone to a 2 like this and a 2 in midfield, and then they've put an extra man just behind the number 9. In this game, it was Cole Palmer, it's been João Pedro in the past. And what that gives is the opposition more bodies in between their own lines. And what usually happens in this case is they drop another man in. So if you can imagine that there's a 4 back here and we've got 4 players or 5 players even between the opposition lines, but they've still got 2 in front. They often want to remove this, or someone drops out like this to cover that extra man down the side, because we've now got 6, not 5 in the last line. So what happens is when they drop a player, they often lose this one up front and then they leave them with 1, which gives Chelsea still that massive numerical advantage, but it gives them another player to stretch and pin in behind. Now this is where Chelsea have started to not blow teams away, but really come out and dominate these teams that they should be dominating, don't get me wrong. But yeah, this is much, much better for me. If you go and watch the Marc Cucurella goal, I believe, against West Ham in the second half, I know it was covered on Monday Night Football as well, is Fofana is still being played as this third centre-half, but what he does is he steps into this space, because you can look there, they've only got 1 pressing forward and you've got this many bodies between the lines to pin. When the block circulates like that, instead of staying so deep as a right centre-half, why don't you go on an adventure with a ball and step into these spaces and have the ball? And he picks up the ball somewhere in this right pocket here and whips it to the back post. And that element of freedom is something, in terms of get on the ball and go get aggressive and go step against teams, is something that I think Chelsea will have a lot more convincing performances against the lesser teams. Obviously, they play Leeds on Tuesday, and that's going to be a game at home where they've got to take it to a team. But I'm looking at Leeds. They play 5 at the back. So expect to see this 2-2 with this 1 in between the lines, like a 2-2-5-1 or a 2-2-6 basically. And I think this is going to be something that Liam Rosenior leans a lot on, because we've seen these Maresca teams have a lot of the ball. We've seen them come up against a low block and have this deft circulation where it's just back and forth, but this adds a little bit more dynamism and adds a little bit more throttle, especially when you look to accelerate the play. So this, at the moment, is what Rosenior is liking a lot to do. I don't think it's a structure for every game, because obviously you can already see the spaces on the counter, especially if it's a 5-4-1 and these players look to move into the channels. But if you're pushing for a game, if you want to blow teams away at home and you want to score a lot of goals against a team, this is something that Chelsea will be looking to use quite a lot. Okay, now I just want to show you some screenshots on your screen now for some examples that I picked up from the Wolves game that really was quite interesting to me. So I've got this one from a counter-press situation at 4 minutes in for Chelsea, and we can see that same idea for João Pedro to play that wall pass. Now, Chelsea have often committed 5 into the last line, but when they do press, it does seem like there's a lot more urgency to break in when the space is there in behind. So 4 minutes on, you can see that pass come back from João Pedro, and then it works itself into Andre Santos, and then he plays a diagonal off into Cole Palmer, who stood on his own in that right pocket where we can imagine. And then once he touches the ball, you can see that flat line of 5 almost forming against Wolves' back 4. So we can see Pedro Neto stood on the outside, João Pedro looking to go down the middle, Enzo Fernandez attacking the right back, and then Cucurella on the outside. And this gets to an opportunity where Neto looks to swing the ball in, and we can see that there's a 3v2 or even a 2v1 on the back post for Chelsea to work this chance. Now, in my opinion, this is how Chelsea are going to look to blow teams away. We're talking about keeping many men forward. And we'll touch a little bit on the press in a minute, because I do think there are concerns there against a better opposition. But again, more changes in the deep build-up. So we can see from this example here on 14 minutes, we can see when that ball is played into Enzo Fernandez, he's looking to scoop it to the outside. So again, we've got 4-2, the players have stood up, but now it's Enzo Fernandez dropping outside the block to receive the ball and bring it inside. He plays a lovely, lovely 1-2 off Andre Santos, and then they break a line through to the middle, into Cole Palmer, wall pass, back into Caicedo, and then they look to snap the ball in behind. These attacks are something that, for me, are very, very fresh under Rosenior. These are attacks that I would familiarise Chelsea with over the last 18 months. I think these are moments when they're sucking in the ball into these tight spaces, using the quality of Enzo Fernandez with that long range, Andre Santos with that 1-2 touch passing, working in the press closing and then the hitting space. And I think that suits, as we've mentioned before, this Chelsea team a lot better, especially when they're going away from home and in these tighter games. If you can just entice that little bit of pressure to come onto your midfield and then break teams in behind, I think that is where you're going to see a lot of good stuff from Rosenior's Chelsea. Now, it's not all good. It's not all good. I do want to touch on one last thing, that obviously Chelsea now are going into an absolutely manic period. So they've got some really, really, really tough games coming up. So I want to talk to you about what they've been doing off the ball and why, for me, it can still look a little bit shaky. And I'm expecting teams like Arsenal mainly to cause problems in this pressing shape. So most of the time it's been a 4-4-2 pressing shape with 4 flat forwards. So they go like this. Now, one thing that I have noticed is Rosenior was a very adaptive guy off the ball. So we spoke about his quotes at Hull about adding layers to his defensive solidity and his defensive structure. Now, I don't doubt that this is something that he's also working on, but we've seen them go like full man-to-man against Arsenal. But in the lesser games, especially against your likes of Wolves, what they've been doing, and Palace more importantly, and you think about the 2 profiles of the strikers that them 2 teams have, very big lads who can hold up the ball, what they're doing is they're almost half committing to the press. So if the ball comes out in the build-up here, and you've got a flat line of 4 looking to build up, Chelsea's 2 forwards almost stand in the way of the central midfielders. I'm looking at Angel Gomez for Palace and for Wolves, and Adam Wharton for Palace. I've noticed it in both these games. They're looking to to stop the lines from going through to the midfielders, but they're not looking to jump straight away. They're looking for a cue and then they jump. Now, what happens is if the fullback drops in a little bit deeper, the Chelsea midfielders don't both push in. So if you can imagine they're against a 4-2, Caicedo and Andre Santos don't both follow their men like that, like in a full man mark type situation. What they often do is commit one body into this. So we often see these moments here where a player is just more covering the space. And this often happens where there's a single man left unmarked between the lines. And Rosenior is then asking the players like Pedro Neto, João Pedro, Cole Palmer to block the lane and cut out maybe a 2v1 situation in the press, not to sit on this player like this. They're still looking to press high, but this pass is often still on. Adam Wharton in the game at Selhurst Park against Chelsea picked up the ball in these situations quite a lot on his own in the midfield. Now, you might ask why is Rosenior opting to not go full man-to-man? He's not opting for it because I think he's scared, especially in England, of this ball coming all the way into the number 9 and the opposition having an opportunity to be 1v1 against your fullbacks, your centre-halves. I think that's what he's worried about. So dropping a player like Caicedo or Andre Santos just in front means that when the ball is bounced off Amateta like number 9, then when that ball is won, Chelsea sometimes, or most of the time, have enough bodies, they make it a 3v2 sometimes, around this player to win the knockdown and win the second ball. So that is something I would want to keep an eye on, especially for Chelsea fans. When you come up against a better opposition who are better when they're bringing the ball out from the defence, when they go long, in the Brentford game as well, I noticed it, going long into Igor Thiago. When they go long, obviously he wants to keep this 3v2, but if a team looks to play out of this press, if you're pressing high, then they could find that spare man in midfield who they're not quite covering. But in the games against your Arsenals, your Napolis as well, they did go somewhat full man-to-man. So I'm not sure if Rosenior looks at the games against Wolves, West Ham and goes, they've probably not got the quality to play through us, so we can half-art it and cheat it a little bit and put Caicedo or Santos just a little bit in front, just to cover that man-to-man situation we've got here, and then try and force the ball long from this more half press. I think maybe that's what he's doing right now, just to cover himself just that little bit more against the big physical strikers when they come up against them. So, and that will happen again in the Leeds game. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a hold-up specialist, so definitely keep an eye out for that. But I do think Rosenior has been very good, and I do like the way he talks. I know he's being took the mick out of a little bit online, but I do really like him. I think he's got some really good principles. Some of the attacks against Wolves in that first half were my idea of football, sort of playing these tight spaces and hitting these bigger spaces with runs in behind, big switches in behind. But they are now coming into one of the toughest periods of the season in terms of fixture difficulty for Chelsea, and it's now how he manages the ship through that period. I think he's already built good connections on the pitch. I think Enzo, Cucurella, João Pedro, Palmer, I think they look good. Andre Santos have been really impressive so far when Liam Rosenior's been in. I think they look a little bit more tight-knitted together. So let's see what Chelsea can offer us up in these next few weeks, but they sure have been very good, in my opinion. But there are still just a couple things I want to see from the out of possession. I want to see them shaped in possession moving a little bit more. I want to see players like Enzo Fernandez having that freedom to come out the block and play. And yeah, really, really impressed. He deserves his credit. He's got 4 wins out of 4 in the Premier League. Could be 5 come Tuesday against Leeds. But yeah, if you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel as we're pushing for 50,000 in 2026. And we'll see you next time on the Overlap Breakdown. Thank you.